You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
But they do the review, and then it still stood, but it created some good TV, I thought.
Meet you at the bike rack after school is what it sounded like.
Grab some poutine and a double-double. It's time for the 2 and Out CFL podcast.
Now they have to kick it out, and they do!
Every week, Travis Currah.
Does anybody still care about this podcast?
And Brazilian Ty.
Hunters are people too.
Talk fantasy football, bring you the latest in CFL news, and sprinkle in a little bit of nonsense.
Are you kidding? This is unbelievable!
Ready, set, hunt!
And we are part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB, Brazilian Ty. Every time I go to the grocery store, I am tempted by the Halloween candy. What is your poison?
Like for Halloween or just in general when I go to the grocery store?
Well, let's go with any of the bite-sized, chocolate bars / candies that are Halloween traditions.
Coffee Crisps or Smarties, probably.
Oh, you like the Canadian ones, eh?
Yeah. And remember that old Coffee Crisp commercial when everybody's talking about how they like their coffee, and the one guy says, "Well, I like mine crisp," and he was like, "What?" I still remember that commercial from when I was a kid. So it's like top 3. I hate coffee. Love Coffee Crisps. I hate ketchup. Ketchup chips are probably my favorite. Not a big fan of cheese. But scalloped potatoes I'll eat till the cows come home.
Dude, if coffee tasted anything like it did in Coffee Crisp,
I'd be wired 24/7.
Oh, there was nothing else I would drink. Because, let's face it, coffee does not taste anywhere near it does in cake or ice cream.
Doesn't taste as good as the French vanillas I get.
And it doesn't taste as good as it smells.
No, that's for sure.
The smell of coffee is just incredible. It's so lame, but I am a Reese's peanut butter cup guy. I can eat about 440 of those in one sitting. So funny. My brother and I used to go hunting for white-tailed deer, and it's always in November, so the discount candy. And you should see the wrappers. By the time the week of hunting is done, you lived on a diet of Halloween candy and just felt like $1 million.
Yeah, that was me and Kindersley 2 years ago. We got sent down there for work. It was like November 2nd. We went to Walmart to buy a shovel because I broke mine in the field. I'm like, $5 for a box of candies. So we bought 4, and that's what we lived off for a week for lunch.
My crowning achievement was going into the Safeway. This is about 4 years ago. They got so tired of the extra candy. 90% off the 200-piece box. That was the best. That was the greatest moment of my life. And it was the good box.
Yeah, but being Ukrainian, what you do is you buy a bunch of those boxes and throw them in the freezer so you don't have to buy candy the next year.
Join 2 and Out for CFL Fantasy and CFL Pick'em and show Currah and Ty what you got.
They are who we thought they were!
Just click cflfantasy.tsn.ca.
Enough from talking about it. There has to be consequences.
And pick'em.cfl.ca.
All right, the first game of the week was Hamilton in Toronto to take on the Argos, a 34-20 win for the Tiger Cats. I think we got to give credit to the Argos here. They didn't just roll over and, let Hamilton walk over him. They were competing, and especially against the run. The Tiger Cats had a tough time getting anything going on the ground. The Argos, it's their 7th loss in a row. Now Hamilton moves into a tie for first in the East with Ottawa, which makes these next 2 weeks absolutely crucial. There's going to be a lot of fun football games. There's still a lot to be decided with a few weeks left in this season. I also think that this game captured maybe the best live mic moment in history. Tressman was not happy, and that pass. I still couldn't tell you what happened on that pass interference against Ronnie Yell there. It was just a stupid call, and Tressman basically says, "Hey, Al, I haven't said a word to you in 7 years. You're lucky I'm mic'd up tonight."
Yeah.
But they do the review, and then it still stood. But it created some good TV, I thought.
Meet you at the bike rack after school is what it sounded like.
The compete level is still up. Now, speaking of Trestman, Arash Madani ended up sending out a tweet in the middle of that game basically saying that the powers that be within the Argos organization are clashing with MLSC, and one of Jim Popp and or Mark Trestman will be gone at the end of the season. Whoa, I just feel like that organization needs some stability. I mean, if the new owners clash with the GM and coach, though, that's what happens, and it's what could happen in BC that we talked about last week. So maybe that's why Ed Hervey's trying to get this team into the playoffs as quickly as possible. But I found this report kind of surprising. When you go into the season expecting you're going to have your franchise quarterback give your backup in James Franklin and or McLeod Bethel Thompson an entire year to study under one of the greatest of all time and then take over seamlessly next year. Of course, that's not the way it went down with Ricky Ray getting hurt at the beginning of the year. It kind of set the Argos off track right from the start.
Well, and this is a team that went into the draft 2 years ago with no head coach and no general manager.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it was a bizarre situation.
Yeah, and like you're saying, maybe stability is what they need. Like you look at any successful franchise in almost any league, stability from the top down is what wins games. What wins championships. And if you're gonna clash with ownership, which is bound to happen at some point, just because they're not their guys, I get that, but if you want to put a product on the field that fans are going to come want to come watch and a winning program, getting rid of the coach and the GM after 2 years of them trying to put this thing together and the way that this team was put together was for Ricky Ray to succeed, not so much McLeod Bethel Thompson and James Franklin. So him going down is a huge part of why they struggled this year. I don't think it's on the coach and the GM. But I mean, like we said last week, they're hired to be fired. So I think it would be, it'd be a terrible move. Keep these guys in there for as long as you possibly can, because these are two of the great minds in the CFL right now.
This is kind of a bizarre stat, if you want to call it that I stumbled across last week. And it is one team in the CFL has seen an increase in average attendance over last year. Do you have any guess as to who that is?
Is it? I'm assuming that it's going to be Toronto because it sounds like a trick question.
It is. When you really think about that, I know the bar is low, and I don't mean that as a shot, but that's crazy. Yeah. I mean, Regina, the honeymoon's kind of over with the new stadium, and the new stadium's bigger than Taylor Field as well. I know a lot of people in Saskatchewan and a lot of people in general thought they should get a 40,000, 45,000 seat stadium in Saskatchewan, but it just can't be sustained. It's not realistic for a city of 150,000 people or whatever to have a stadium that size. Edmonton, they're hosting the Grey Cup. You would have thought there would have been an increase in season tickets. The hype leading up to the big game in November would increase attendance. But they've also had really bad luck with weather in Edmonton. I know it sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but there's been some crappy games. We sat in the rain for ludicrous. This past game with Busta Rhymes at halftime was another cold one. 2 weeks ago was a cold one. We're getting kind of November weather in September and October, but it does make a factor, especially on the walk-up crowd. And, I mean, Edmonton's lost 6 of 8 or whatever up until this past game. But Toronto, the only team with an attendance. Now, it's only in the triple digits. It's not thousands or anything like that. But I guess it's a start. And I'd wager that the increase would have been a lot more if they would have had a better team this year.
Oh, 100% agree. 3 and what are they now, 3-12? That's not exactly football that a lot of people are going to want to go watch. Especially losing 7 in a row. You have your season ticket base. It's not the biggest in the CFL by any means. That are still going to.
They've got some passionate fans in Toronto, though.
They absolutely do. But I mean, you're always trying to get new people into the stadium. Some markets have skipped a generation. Have missed out on people our age and maybe a little bit older. Like, if we had like your brother's generation, maybe a little bit older. It's really tough for teams to get new fans when parents of kids that they're trying to target aren't fans of the league. So I mean, any increase is good in my eyes. Like you said, it's not astronomical by any means, but it's still progress.
I think the Argos kind of have a bright future here. James Franklin looked okay in this one, 22 of 37 for 292. He had the 2 touchdowns and an interception. He also had 44 rushing yards. We knew Franklin was mobile, but man, I thought he had some wheels in this one. And I think if James Wilder's got to be worried. I really don't think that's exaggerating much here. Brandon Burks had 4 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown, and he also had 9 carries for 34 yards. You would have liked to have seen more carries, but he's more explosive, I think, than James Wilder.
And with James Wilder holding out last year, wanting more money, and because they wouldn't, release him from his contract to go down to the NFL, if he gets offers, he's going to go. So this is a great insurance policy for the Argos and Brandon Burks. He proved that he can play. We've seen a little bit of him earlier in the year, last couple of weeks, where this guy can carry the football, and the name of the game is just if you're gonna run the football in the CFL, you can't be getting 1-2 yards a carry. Like, you have to have a decent average to give your team a shot on that second down, and he proved that he can do that on Friday night.
I don't think this can be understated, but the compete level that S.J. Green continues to show is awesome. He had 11 targets, 7 catches for 127, and a touchdown. Just continues to get out there and be a leader for this team. He seems like he's the leader on the Argos right now. Deron Carter had 2 catches for 18 yards. It still seems a little bit subdued from Deron Carter, but they do have some legitimate weapons in Toronto. If they can keep kind of this core together for next year, I think the biggest issues right now are on defense, and the Tiger Cats kind of took them to task there with Mazzoli throwing for
took them to task, maybe. I can't believe you missed that one.
I totally did. Well done. Well played. Mazzoli threw for 338 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. The 70% completion percentage is looking real good, but their run game was limited a little bit, with John White having 52 yards on 13 carries. But we're getting to a point, man, where how do you defend Brandon Banks?
You take penalties. Really? If he's not gonna beat you,
hope they mess up.
Yeah, if he's not gonna beat you by catching the ball running past you, he's gonna beat you by drawing penalties. 8 of 9 for 178 with a touchdown, 31.8 fantasy points. I don't know how. You have to get hands on this guy. You have to slow him down to the line of scrimmage, and if you can't do that, you're done. And we've seen it time and time again where guys, give a little bit of cushion, and if you give him that 1 extra yard, he's able to grab that extra gear and get around the DB, and he's gone. So, and even on underneath routes, he makes stuff happen. So you have to rally to the football when he has it, and you have to slow him down somehow right off the line.
On the other end, Luke Tasker had 4 catches for 63 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was the guy in the red zone for Jeremiah Mazzoli.
And 2 of those catches, he's wide open. So
yeah,
I don't
untouched.
Right. So and right there, it seemed the only person that could really tackle Brandon Banks was the goalpost. So the rest of the defense is focused on trying to catch him, and that just leaves Luke Tasker wide open. So, I mean, not so much, and that's another way Bangs hurts. He's drawing so much attention that guys like Luke Tasker and Mike Jones are able to get open or better looks against maybe not the top defensive halves for Toronto, and they're able to get a little bit more favorable matchups.
This game didn't mean much for Toronto at all, but they really showed intensity. There were a couple moments in this game where, yeah, guys were in their face. It looks like they were ready to fight, and maybe that's just because it's the classic Ticats-Argos rivalry, but it meant a lot for players on both teams to win this one, especially Hamilton, and they could have overlooked Toronto. They really could have, and put themselves in a bad position to catch Ottawa for first in the East, but they did not, and they ended up winning this one by 2 touchdowns. It was the 75th game of the CFL season. We're getting so close to the end. I'm trying to stall because I don't want to talk about the next one.
I'm so glad I had to work on Saturday.
Hey, I picked Winnipeg to win, but I didn't think it would be a shutout.
Yeah, it was a boat race.
But a shutout on the Saskatchewan offense does not surprise me, sadly.
No, like, in all reality, Winnipeg should have actually held them to negative points. Would have been the only way that they could have had a good, a decent defense, an okay defense beat Saskatchewan right now with the way their offense is playing. The other team's offense, Winnipeg's offense, would have had more pressure, with the way Saskatchewan's defense is able to force turnovers and score. So, shutting out the Riders, whatever. It's not a big surprise for this year, and Winnipeg's defense loves the turnover as much as anybody else. So, I mean, yeah, it is what it is. I kind of didn't have a lot of faith I did change from Zach Collaros to Trevor Harris on Saturday morning because I was like, don't be...
Yeah, you'd be getting tweets left and right.
So, yeah, I chickened out, which, in hindsight, it was a genius move because he only scored negative 0.8, so...
But what did Harris score?
16-ish, so, it was better.
Wow.
Yeah, or 14.
He didn't have the worst game then.
14.5 points, so, he outscored by 15.3. I'll take it.
So, the Riders didn't have a touchdown against Edmonton either. So there's another game without an offensive touchdown. But I don't know. What do you think about this? And I honestly believe this, that the Riders are soft. When the thermometer drops, I don't think they have what it takes to beat a Winnipeg in, a -10 game with some snow. I really don't think they would have a shot at all in winning that. I really don't think there's a team in the CFL that would beat the Bombers in that situation. And the way they look right now, they smashed Edmonton. They smashed Saskatchewan. They went into Ottawa, had a big, tough win on the road. This team might... And you know what? If you look at the West Division standings...
Don't you dare say it.
I think, let's say this. I think they're playing like Grey Cup champs right now. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, it's entirely fair.
If you look at the West Division standings right now, every team could finish second, and actually every team could finish second and have that semifinal home playoff game. Winnipeg's got a shot, BC does, and Edmonton still has a shot if they win out and Saskatchewan loses out. So this is going to be a crazy end of the season. So this was a big, big loss for Saskatchewan, and on the other side, a massive win for the Bombers.
And we've beat this dead horse all season. This offense of Saskatchewan is brutal. And like you said, they're soft. Like, it seems that I don't know how to even... I don't even know where to start with this, because to get shut out is just... That's so bad. It doesn't come as a surprise. Zach Collaros, 8 of 19 for 69 with 2 picks, 4 rushing yards. Brendan Bridge, not a whole heck of a lot better. 7 of 12 for 59 with 7 rushing yards.
Well, Bridge had 2 dropped interceptions, and maybe one was
and that's his MO.
On a penalty, I don't know, but
that's his MO.
Yeah,
right. He gets lucky with those. The receiving core right now is a bunch of who. It's like, so that's not helping matters. It's, I don't know, like their defense shows up. It seems, that Winnipeg only had 2 offensive touchdowns. So, I mean, they
didn't have to do
much.
The
defense didn't let them down. The offense of Saskatchewan is the reason they lost this game, and it's not even up for debate, in my opinion.
Well, the defense was on the field every play, and we talk about how they're being soft. We got to add the fumbles in there too, and I honestly think it was because these guys were cold. I know Trey Mason didn't have himself a fumble, but it looked like before the game he was hopping around trying to warm up, and you're in trouble if the weather's already in your head at that point, man.
Yeah, if you're letting it affect you now, that takes away your home field advantage. Especially if let's say BC gets 3rd and Saskatchewan finish 2nd and they host that West Semi, you should have somewhat of an advantage with BC coming in. But if your players are already being sissies about it and they're already cold, well, if you guys made plays, you'd be on the field more and you'd be moving around more. So maybe take that into consideration. But if the weather's already affecting you now, you're going to lose all home field advantage you have against a dome team. Any home field advantage is just going to be negligible because if the weather's affecting you physically, it's going to be affecting you mentally as well. It just slows everything down, and if you're not running all cylinders, you're not going to win football games.
I know a lot of the guys are from the southern United States, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's also an amazing thing called sleeves.
Yeah, there is that too. Just don't wear them in Duron Carter style.
Oh my God. It's the little things that piss me off,
It is. I know it is. Kyron Moore kind of became the feature guy in this offense, but he fumbled the ball twice, lost it once. He had 6 targets and 2 catches. Caleb Hawley also had a fumble that was lost there too. And Hawley had 7 targets. I ended up throwing in my fantasy lineup at the very last minute, and I'm kicking myself because before this game I took him out. I put Chris Matthews in, and then I started watching interviews with Bo Levi. Yeah, we'll get him worked in when we can. Yeah, we'll get him worked in. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. So I put Hawley back in. 2 catches, 6 yards. Thanks, buddy.
I had Chris
Shaq
Matthews.
Evans. I know you did. Shaq Evans was the leading receiver with 42 yards. But what's sad about this is that Patrick Lavoie had 3 catches for 38 yards. He's their best Canadian receiver. He's been there for 2 days. Montreal and Ottawa were basically only using him as a fullback, tight end kind of hybrid, and now he's their best Canadian receiver. I love Patrick Lavoie. Don't get me wrong, but he has never been used in this role before.
No, and teams miss on guys all the time. It happens. We've seen it. With Brandon Banks, was never used as receiver. New coaching staff comes in, and June Jones puts him into the offense, pays huge dividends. See guys that are used in a certain way when certain teams go to another team and they think they're misusing this guy, and they put him into the lineup and they try this stuff and it doesn't pan out, and it makes you look like, well, whatever, we still got this guy to do what he did before. Then it seems like a waste, but. Like, Lavoie shouldn't be your best Canadian receiver. And
he's a big boy. He should be blocking, I think.
Yeah, he shouldn't be your best Canadian receiver. And if he is, your offense is in a lot of trouble. I mean that is no slight to Patrick Lavoie. It's just that's not what he is.
Yeah, I'm not crapping on him at all, but he's such a big body. He could be an extra blocker back there, and Lord knows that's what the Riders need now, because they've been lucky. the entire season when it came to injuries on that offensive line, well, Darius Blodak ends up getting carted off the field. On the other side, Zach Evans left the game, Matt Elam left the game, and Mikael Brooks got carted off the field, who has been a big part of that Saskatchewan rush defense up the middle. These are some big injuries for the Riders at really the wrong time. After the Lions win in Calgary, I really think that it's possible that they lose out here. And I don't think that is exaggerating. There's only 2 games. They're going to Calgary next. And then BC could come in on a roll on the last game of the season before the bye for the Riders. So this game was critical, and they didn't show up. And then you add the injuries on top of that. Suddenly, it's not a good spot to be in.
Like the offense hasn't been very good. They've been considerably lucky with the injuries. They've had guys go down, but I mean, they were holes you could fill. But it's getting that time in the year where you don't want to start trying to fill holes in week 18. It just doesn't bode well for your season. And the depth that you need to have at this time of year to win football games is just something I don't know if this team has. And like you said, losing out is a complete possibility, and I think it happens. Which totally puts the playoff picture into a tailspin. Who knows what's going to happen with that? But yeah, just at some point the injuries were going to happen. It would have been nice for them to be a little more spread out and maybe earlier in the year. But this is the hand they're dealt, and they kind of put themselves into this situation to a point as well.
Time for Josiah St. John to show that number 1 pick pedigree, right?
Oh yeah.
Got to give credit to the Bombers, especially Adam Bighill. He was all over the field, dominating the Riders. It felt like he was in the backfield or around the ball every single play, and congrats to him for getting to 600 tackles in his career. He's a hell of a player, and he's playing as good as he ever has.
He might be playing better than he ever has.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think
3 sacks, forced fumble, 8 tackles.
He might have had better statistical years when he was with the Lions, but just the leadership that he brings to this Winnipeg defense is something that Sam Hurl could have never done. And I know we crap on Sam Hurl, but that's because he's Sam Hurl. Just the leadership he's able to bring to that defense and just totally control, the line of scrimmage as a linebacker. He's a game changer, and that's exactly what this defense needed. That they had Taylor Loeffler and a couple guys that ball hawks, but they didn't have a guy in the middle that could dictate which way the running back would have to go and then completely shut that down. Loeffler can do it, but Loeffler's a safety, so he's 10, 15 yards off the line of scrimmage. Takes that. I mean, you're going to have to be so far out of position on blitzes and stuff. Adam Bighill just completely shut down a team's offense on his own. And it's just amazing to watch.
Yeah, speaking of that, Taylor Loeffler, he had 2 interceptions. Anthony Gator had the fumble return for a touchdown. The Bomber defense, they might actually be the fastest defense in the league. And it's almost like once they get that one turnover, they're like sharks in the water, and they just want more and will not let up. It's actually quite impressive to watch.
We're going to need a bigger boat.
And you know what? How about that Strevler touchdown to Weston Dressler? It looked like they were just going to sneak it for a yard. He runs back. He throws a bullet to Dressler, who makes a beautiful catch for a touchdown. And I feel like they're utilizing their 2 quarterbacks perfectly in Winnipeg.
Shades of Dan Marino with the fake spike.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
And I love that play call. You're totally catching the defense off guard because they totally assume that Strevler's just going to come in and sneak it, like you said, get the first down, whatever. If that play backfires, Mike O'Shea is getting ostracized. If that play doesn't work out and the game doesn't go like it did, it worked out. It's a great play call, right spot in the field to do it. Why can't Saskatchewan figure out how to use their quarterbacks properly, or maybe not properly, but the fact that Collaros is
when they were using two guys early in the year.
The fact that Collaros is having the year he is, it just shows that maybe they made a huge mistake in signing him. I don't know. It's not going well, and I mean, we could pile on and crap on this team for another hour, but I mean, we got other games that were way better than this one we can talk about.
Yeah, Darvin Adams had the one catch for 72 yards, so he made that one count with the touchdown. It was a beautiful play. One note on Saskatchewan, where do you think they go with the quarterback situation next year? It's been talked about a lot. The free agent frenzy that could happen next season with Mike Riley, Bo Levi Mitchell, absolutely everyone. Do they stick with Collaros? Do they go with a young guy with upside, James Franklin, Jonathan Jennings, who really doesn't seem like their GM likes him much in BC? Or do they restructure the contract of Zach Collaros and get him back for cheaper? I'm kind of leaning towards that option for the Riders.
I don't see a scenario where Collaros is not the starting quarterback because Chris Jones cannot put his ego aside. He does not want this signing to look like a failure.
Fair enough.
That's just that's my humble opinion.
Yeah, you're so humble, aren't you?
Hey, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way.
We're saying thank you to our sponsor today, ATB Financial, and they've got that new podcast, We Are Alberta. It comes out once a month, hosted by ATB economist Nick Ford. Now, the first one came out, actually last month in September, and it's all about naturals, cannabis, how that's going to change Alberta's economic fabric. And hey, it's the big week, Brazilian Ty. I don't know if they've got any of that stuff out in Morden, Manitoba, but it's the big week for that legalization.
I'm sure some guys will be losing their jobs Wednesday morning.
And then, actually just a few weeks ago, episode 2 came out talking about Alberta's energy sector changing. So go check out We Are Alberta by ATB. It's all on the website, atb.com/wearealberta, atb.com/wearealberta. Game number 3 on the week. It was a crucial game for both teams. The Edmonton Eskimos come out of the hole, and you know what? They played well in all 3 phases, I thought. Edmonton beats Ottawa 34-16. It was real close as the game started going, and I think what needs to be talked about here is Mike Riley and his performance here. 31 of 38 for 369 yards. They had a touchdown. He also had 10 carries for 72 yards. This guy was on the floor of his bathroom Friday morning with the flu. He was feeling like absolute garbage.
Quote unquote the flu. I've been on the bathroom floor before.
He didn't go to walk through. Kevin Glenn worked with the ones, and then he came out and had a performance like this. And you know what? It seemed like the rest of his team wasn't really supporting him as the game started, with Bryant Mitchell, one of the most boneheaded fumbles you'll see, trying to stiff arm a guy behind him.
Makes complete sense why you would do that.
The ball. Yeah, and then Duke Williams had a bad fumble as well. There's a guy that I don't know if is 100% himself.
Yeah.
With that big hit a few weeks ago, I think it was the Winnipeg game. And he doesn't look the same. He had 5 catches for 39 yards, but he had the fumble there as well. Who knows if he's 100%? And who knows, maybe this cold is bugging Mr. Duke Williams as well. But Mike Riley looked like his old MOP self here.
Yeah, 31 to 38, 369, touchdown, 72 rushing yards, like you said. Like those are completely insane. You'd like to see maybe the touchdowns a little higher, but I mean, CJ Gable comes through with 2 on the ground. Bryant Mitchell, 13 catches. They threw to him 17 times.
He was a beast here.
Like 13 catches, 190 and a touchdown, 38 fantasy points. Like you said, Duke Williams, 5 on 6. targets for 39. Duke Williams wasn't a huge part of the offense on Saturday, and like you said, I think a lot of that attributes to him maybe not being 100%. Weather starting to turn, injuries, if you're a little bit sore, it's not going to feel any better in the cold. It's going to be a lot harder moving around, so he doesn't look like himself. CJ Gable, 1 catch, 22. He added 87 yards rushing, so he had a nice little day. The offense looked like it bounced back after those early struggles they had in the last couple weeks. It looks like a completely different team. Next week could be another repeat of what we saw last week. We just don't know what we're getting. They're kind of just really inconsistent right now, and it kind of sucks, because we're so used to this being such a prolific offense and really fun to watch. This was that offense this week. The last couple weeks it hasn't been, so just hoping they can keep it up.
Yeah, can they do it again? Martese Jackson even got into the fun with a 13-yard rush for a touchdown. Made a beautiful cut on that play. Listening to the post-game show afterwards was a lot of fun. Mike Riley was giving Bryant Mitchell the gears on his big 75-yard touchdown. The defense caught up to him and tackled him, so it looked like Mitchell may have run out of gas running for 75 yards. But we talked about the Riders' offensive line making all these changes and it not going well against Winnipeg. The Eskimo offensive line made some big changes. Tommy Draheim ends up coming off the injured list, plays left tackle for the first time since week 1. Matt O'Donnell moves back to right guard. And look at that. They keep Mike Riley clean. It's the best the offensive line has looked since early in the season.
Weird what can happen when guys are playing their positions, eh?
Oh, yeah. Funny how that
works. Yeah, it's really weird. I don't get it. But I mean,
and it helps that Arjun Colquhoun is back playing corner.
Absolutely, it does. That's also another huge, and it's almost like another trade deadline. I know the trade deadline was earlier in the week, but I mean, when guys are coming off the injured list, it's the same thing in any sport or any league. Guys coming off an injury list is like a free agency signing or a trade where you didn't have to give anything up, and they're getting added into this lineup, and the added bonus is that they already know the system. Nothing's changed since they got hurt. There probably is changes, but I mean, they've been with the team the whole time. That they know these changes, and guys coming back in the lineup. That's a huge add for this team that needs to win football games right now. They're not in a playoff spot. That they need to win football games. They need to win their last 5. Look, they need to win out because if you want to control your own destiny, you don't want to be relying on other teams. That's too risky. If you're going to rely on other teams to win, for example, if you need Calgary to win in Week 21, you're probably not going to get it. If you need Calgary to win in the Grey Cup, you're probably not going to get it either. But that's neither here nor there. You want to be able to control your own destiny, and so I mean, these guys coming back is a huge add for this team.
Vidal Hazelton. Well, let's say it. The Eskimos had 8 receivers involved in this one. I know Natea J had -3 yards, but we'll move on from that. Vidal Hazelton even had himself 4 catches for 44 yards and some nice ones early in the game. I said in the stands, so where was that against Regina? He had a rough game against the Riders the week before, and he bounces back with some nice catches in this one. So the Eskimo offense was firing on all cylinders, and see what happens when you give your running back 17 carries. CJ Gable has himself 87 yards, and he averages over 5 yards a carry. That's massive for your offense.
And why do you think that Mike Riley had such a prolific day passing the ball? Because they were able to set up off the run, and Ottawa's defense had to respect it. And if you have to respect the run, you're going to have to load up the box a little bit, and maybe change up your scheme, and that leaves your halfbacks pretty vulnerable, especially against guys like Mitchell and Duke Williams, guys that can go up and get the football, make plays for the quarterback. That's just such a huge aspect that running game for Edmonton because they can set so much off of it. And Mike Riley adding 72 yards rushing too, that's. You can't be giving up 72 rushing yards to a quarterback and win a football game. It's really tough to do.
It was a real fun game plan to watch, I thought, in the stands in the first half because the Eskimo corners were playing 8-9 yards off their receivers, and then Ottawa had no problem running screen passes and taking 7 or 8 yards at a time, and they kind of made the adjustments there. There was a point where they tried to go man-to-man.
Wait, you're saying Mike Benavides This is what you're telling me, is Mike Benavides played a soft zone defense? Get that garbage out of here.
Then he goes man-to-man, Mercy Maston on Deontay Spencer, and what happens?
Exactly.
Spencer gets a 61-yard touchdown.
In my lineup.
That was a fun battle to watch. I don't know if
Yeah.
you can see it on TV, but Maston and Spencer were going at it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you want this time of year.
Yeah, it was fun to watch. Spencer had 5 catches for 98 yards and a touchdown. And Sinopoli, he had himself 6 catches for 50 yards. I mentioned that. The first time in his career, 100 catches in a single season. Sinopoli having an amazing year. And I don't know if you want to call it a breakout, but it's definitely the best season he's had.
Yeah, and, we we looked at this offense for the last couple of years. Guys just seem to rack up 1,000 yards with ease. And so to call it a coming out, and I don't know if you can call it that, he's becoming more consistent. I would think, or more reliable. He's kind of settled into that, not necessarily settled into a role, but he's that second down. He can catch anything you throw at him almost. Great ball security, minus a few hiccups like we've seen. But, this guy just week in, week out, throw the ball, catch the ball, and that's just the name of the. And that's just, but what he does is the name of the game.
The Red Blacks couldn't get the league's leading rusher going, and you know what? 2 of the league's leading rushers were non-factors this week, with Andrew Harris having nothing to do in the second half of the Rider Bombers game. But Powell only had 9 carries for 40 yards. A big part of that, I think, is Amondo Sewell, who signed himself a 2-year extension with the Edmonton Eskimos. He has really turned it on. Even in the game last week against Saskatchewan, Sewell had himself a game, and in this one he had another sack. He adds 3 tackles. As a defensive tackle, he disrupts just about any play that he's a part of. It's awesome.
And it's really difficult to get sacks from that inside position. It's a lot of double and sometimes triple teams, depending on how the tackles are handling the ends on the outside. So for him to be as explosive as he is in the middle is a treat to watch. And like when he goes down for 3 plays because he gets rolled up on or something like that, you can see the change in that defensive line in the middle. It's just not the same. And then when he gets back on the field, it seems like they're back to their old ways. So he's a huge component to that defense for Edmonton.
Yeah, so once Powell gets out of the game for Ottawa, it does shut down the pass game a little bit. They did okay with their big 3 in Ellingson, Spencer, and Sinopoli, but Edmonton they beat them all over the place. And you know what? Driving to Commonwealth Stadium that day, my little old Ford Ranger was getting blown all over the highway. I was really worried about Lewis Ward's streak. But he kept it going. Another 3, and Lewis Ward's streak is alive. And you know what? He is going to miss. Well, he's got to miss eventually.
Does he, though?
The next kick he misses, it's going to be crucial.
Oh,
it's going to cost
why would you
a
do
division
this to
lead.
Red Blacks fans? What is your problem?
It's going to cost. It's going to cost a playoff game, a Grey Cup, a division win.
You're an animal.
Something.
You're an animal.
Well, come on. He's not going to miss a game in the a kick in the first quarter. You know that.
But what if he does? Then there's no pressure.
Well, maybe he should intentionally miss one then.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe. He's got to be Rookie of the Year, is he not?
Ooh.
Or at least the East nominee.
You know what? I would like to see that. Have we ever seen a kicker win Rookie of the Year? I probably have, but
I don't know who else you even put in there.
Yeah, I really don't think there's another option.
No. Like I've never seen anything like this. Like this is insane what he's doing, especially as a rookie.
Oh.
Like it's stupid.
It's a lot of fun to watch.
And you just jinxed him, so now he probably won't win it.
Oh, if I had that power, man,
Yeah, then you'd be cheering for the Astros right now.
I used to think it would be Don Jackson's award to lose, but he's kind of slowed down a little bit. And you know what? I would love to see little Lewis Ward walk away with that award. What is he, 5'1"? I think that makes it more impressive.
Yeah. Go from a security guard to Rookie of the Year. Like, it needs to be a movie.
He was working the game that the Ottawa Red Blacks, what was it, 2nd and 38 or whatever, when Burris made the big throw to Ellingson to go to the Grey Cup. He was a security guard at that game. And now he's one of the best kickers in the league. I love it.
Yeah, it's unreal.
So a tough loss for Ottawa. I mean, they're on the road here. Edmonton was firing in all cylinders. Ottawa just could not take advantage of the turnovers in the first half. They only came away with field goals there. If they turn those into majors, it is a different game and a different result here. But Edmonton's defense has been holding. They've been limiting players, and people have been crapping on Benavides a lot. But the defense has been playing well. They have not been to blame for this losing streak that they just got out of.
No, when your offense isn't scoring points, it's hard. You can't shut teams out every week. If your offense is only scoring 8, good for you. If you're only scoring 18, 19 points in a week, it's really hard to win football games. It's really hard to put that much trust and that much faith and that much onus on your defense. It gets a little ridiculous, and when you're playing that much, it's really hard to stay on top of it.
So I tell you what, when I left Commonwealth Stadium, I was 3-0 for my pick'em for the week. I was feeling pretty good.
Oh, just a note. I'm on Wikipedia, so take this with a grain of salt. I do not see any kicker winning the most outstanding rookie award in the CFL.
Oh,
so it could be
maybe a first.
Yes.
By the time we were out of Edmonton, it was 13-0 BC. Calgary loses their first game of the year at home, and BC only wins their second road game of the year. They're into that crossover spot. They are hanging on. And this Friday Night Football this week with Ottawa, Hamilton, BC, Edmonton is going to be some fun football. I cannot wait to watch that. You know what I felt with BC here? They just controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. The offensive line really held. When you're going against Jagara Davis and Micah Johnson, and you're able to run the ball like you did, Tyrell Sutton, his first game, he has 106 yards and 2 touchdowns. And really, they kept Lule clean for the most part. So that offensive line had a hell of a performance for the Lions.
Yeah, and, Sutton being able to get those 22 carries, that really gets your offensive line more involved. They're doing the hitting as opposed to being the ones getting ran at and smashed in the head continually. Gets them more into the game. Now we've talked about this. This is the time of year where you need to run the football, and Sutton keeping it between the tackles. That wears the defense out as well, and they're able to feed off of it. And he didn't put up huge numbers, but Lule was able to take advantage and spread the ball around to his receivers. Only threw the one pick. Didn't have a great day fantasy wise, but it was good enough to win the football game.
And the BC defense really held. Calgary had an opportunity to come back in this one, or they were leading 21-20 late in the game, and then BC just kept chipping away with more Ty-Long field goals, including a big 52-yarder late in the game, and the defense just really held. And at the beginning of the year, that defense was getting criticized a lot, especially the secondary. But now they're sitting here, and Solomon Elimimian is probably a week from getting back onto the field, and the defense is going to get even better.
Yeah. Once they traded for Sean Lemon, I mean, it seemed to turn that defensive line around, and the defense started to click a little more. And now they've finally shown that they can play with the big boys, so to speak. I mean, to go into Calgary and win a football game this time of the year when they're still starting starters is a huge accomplishment for this team.
It just looked like BC wanted it more, and quite frankly, they needed it more to get into this one.
They were backed into a corner, right? It's like a dangerous animal. Backed in a corner, it's going to fight. And that's exactly what BC did. I wanted to use a cat metaphor there, but it just seemed too on the nose. So, but like you said, the desperate times call for desperate measures. They showed up and they balled out and they got the win. And that, I mean, getting a win anytime against a division opponent is huge. To do it against Calgary in October, this close to playoffs, it makes it even more impressive.
Don Jackson only had 12 carries for 35 yards, 2.9 yards per carry. His longest rush was 8 yards, and he was running hard, but the BC defense was just there with Awe and Herdman and Davon Coleman. I love that guy up the middle. He's fun to watch. And, you know what? My fantasy week started so good. Mazzoli, John White, Brandon Burks, Luke Tasker, and then it just fell off a cliff with Caleb Hawley and Juwan Breskison, who has had double-digit points in the last 3 weeks. In this one, he gets 1 target, and that's it. That is it. Eric Rogers had 11 targets, 3 catches, and 41 yards. Chris Matthews had 3 catches and 45 yards and a touchdown. His first CFL game since, I guess, playing with the Bombers in 2012. He's only been there for a few weeks. But it sure seems like Bo likes to throw to those big boys, those big receivers in Rogers and Matthews.
And it's so much easier to do that. You get a favorable matchup size wise against a smaller defensive half, and it just makes sense to throw a ball up and let your playmakers make plays, and that's what Bo has done. He's still really good at throwing to almost anybody on his team, but it seemed like he really struggled. In that second half, just trying to make the short dump routes and stuff like that. It didn't look good. I don't know what that was. I mean, he was bound to have an off game at some point. They weren't going to, run the table by any means for the rest of the year. So it just, I don't know. It just, like, Matthews and Eric Rogers are probably going to be his favorite targets, especially with the depleted receiving core they have, and they're going to play against smaller guys, and it's just throw the ball up and hope for the best, I think, is basically what he's thinking in a lot of these spots. And on the other hand, Lule is having his receivers get behind defenders, and they're not looking at the ball, and he's able to get throws into where, it looks like the defender is all over it, but he's really not. And Bo just didn't have those opportunities, or when he did, he just didn't make the play that he needed to make at that point in time. So he's outplayed a little bit. The stats don't say it, but I think Lule had a way better game.
Anthony Parker burned his old team with a 79-yard punt return. And Brian Burnham had himself 65 yards on 2 catches, a 55-yarder that was a tough one that he hauled in, but that seems to be his bread and butter. He likes to catch those tough ones as well, and Devere Posey had 4 catches for 44 yards on 8 targets, so he continues to get more involved in that Lions offense. Burnham, it seems like, has kind of become a bigger leader, a bigger presence on that offense since Manny Arsenault went down.
And that's what needs to happen. You need guys to step up in situations like that. We know Arsenault, a huge veteran presence in that locker room, in that receiving core, in that offense. And for Burnham to step up and take over that role somewhat. I know Arsenault is still around the team and stuff like that, but, I mean, on the field, you need to have a guy who's going to assume that leadership role, and Burnham's done a heck of a job.
So the Lions win, and we could actually have a 3-way tie for second as this season winds to a close.
We can have a 4-way tie at the end of it.
Oh, you're right, a 4-way tie. The Riders are 10-6, Bombers 9-7, Lions 8-7, and Eskimos 8-8. Thursday's podcast, we're going to have some fun games to talk about with Friday night football being Ottawa, Hamilton, BC, Edmonton, and then the game of the year on Saturday will be the Argos and the Owls, and then the Riders and the Stampeders Saturday night.
That's so basically what we're getting on Saturday night is an NL matchup and an AL matchup.
Hey, you know what? I might pick Johnny Manziel as my quarterback.
Okay, we're done. Actually, it's probably not a terrible pick at all.
We're a part of the Alberta Podcast Network, powered by ATB. Go to the website, albertapodcastnetwork.com, because there's a category, there's a podcast for all kinds of interests. There is Ed, conversations about the teaching life. Shane Lawrence is the host, just honest conversations with the teacher. And I'm not fresh out of high school, but if I could go back and say one thing to my teachers, it would probably be, I'm sorry.
Mine would be, can you teach me how to do taxes? I don't know where I'm supposed to or when I'm going to use matrices. But I have a feeling that my time could have been spent learning some other valuable life lessons instead of that.
Hey. Yeah, when I went to buy a house, I knew nothing. I didn't know where to start. But I've been doing my own taxes since I was about 17. So. Oh,
yeah, it's easy. I just go online, punch it in, and I don't have any write-offs, so it's not like it matters.
Yeah, and I've never been audited. Then I'll worry.
Yeah, if the government wants to keep giving me money, I'll take it. I don't know how I'm getting tax returns at this point, but I'll take it.
I don't know how we got to this point, but AlbertaPodcastNetwork.com. Check out all the other great shows in the network. Give us a rating, a review, a subscription on iTunes, and we shall talk to you Thursday morning.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.